Are you ready to stop riding the emotional elevator of life? Are you ready to learn how to elevate your emotions that keep you psychologically traumatized or in an addictive behavior? You are in the right place. Here is your host, Sandee Byrd, trauma, addiction, life, and spiritual coach of the Emotional Elevator Show.
Well, welcome everyone. You are joining me, Sandee Byrd, on Emotional Elevator on the Inspired Choices Network. And it's a special day for someone out there. She's going to kill me for this, but it's just a special day. So I just want to recognize Christine for all the hard work she does with all of us at Inspired Choices Network. And those of us she helps by guiding us with all of her knowledge and her expertise as being a business coach. Just want to acknowledge that because she does a phenomenal job here on Inspired Choices Network with all of her hosts, but also with those of us she works with as a business coach because she is a phenomenal lady. But tonight we're talking about generational curses on Emotional Elevator. And this definitely is a topic that is probably going to spark a lot of people's thinking and emotions. And oh my gosh, I never thought about that. Or oh my gosh, Sandy might have a point. So if there's anything that comes up listening to this show about generational curses, please reach out to me. Don't sit on it because I'm going to dive into a lot of generational curses that were put on me that I am still working through at 55. And so if you find out or if something strikes your curiosity or just sits there and doesn't feel right with something I say, reach out to me, please, at sandy@emotionalelevator.com or at sandeebirdcoach@gmail.com, because generational curses are one of the biggest and hardest cycles to break, not just for you, because if you don't break them, you are passing them down. And this is a show that at some point I would like to see all my kids on here to talk about this, but especially my daughter, because as a mother, sometimes we don't realize when we decide to hold on to trauma. And as I'm showing you, I'm really holding on to trauma. I'm tensing it up. I'm bearing it. I'm suppressing it. What do we do when we do that? We're harboring it. And if you know anything about your chakras or the spiritual or your physical body, when we hold it inside of us, it's got to get released somehow. And I'm here to tell you, I held it, I suppressed it, and I released it into 3 children. And if I would have known now at 55, all the stuff that I suppressed that I was going to release into my children, I would have worked on this shit 30 years ago. My oldest child will be 30 this year, and the trauma that I decided to pass down to each of my kids, I should have worked on it. So I'm here to tell you, and it's not all the trauma that we think of that has to do with physical abuse. If you read about the show, it's also the things about abundance and love that is still passed down from generations. And I think of those as curses too, because it's what our parents thought, believed, or felt that they then passed down to us. And this is a big topic for me. And this is one of the main reasons why I decided I wanted to become a coach and I wanted to work with a lot of other women who are experienced this and see things in their kids or go, why did my kid go through this? Well, because we kind of allowed it. By suppressing it, we pushed it into our inner being. And where did it go? It went right into our children. And that's why this topic for me is probably one of the biggest topics for me when it comes to my trauma, my abuse, everything that I talk about on the show, from addiction to codependency to everything, can stem from generational curses. And it's not, some of the curses I broke, released it, and that is great. Like alcoholism. I was not an alcoholic. That is a generational curse that could have been passed to me. But that is the one I broke. But I still had an addiction. My addiction was emotional eating. I was killing myself with not focusing on foods that were healthy for me, just foods in general. I also went from one extreme to the other extreme with my eating, from bulimia, anorexia, to then overeating. So think about the complexity with that within my body. And that is definitely a health topic I could definitely talk about, is the damage I did to my body with bulimia, the damage I did to my body with anorexia, the damage I did to my body being hooked on laxatives. It's true. It's there. But it was also a generational curse because I was the product of an addict. But hers was alcohol. And I told myself multiple times in my life I was never going to be an alcoholic. I never wanted to go down that road. I still had a problem. I still saw my body image, which was another curse that was passed down to me through my mother, that she never saw her image beautiful. She never saw her body as beautiful. And that is going to unravel more with this generational curse and some of the things that happened to her. But her not having a positive body image, and as women, when we don't, and we have daughters out there, and even when we have sons, we sometimes pass that down to them because it is considered a generational curse when we don't see our body image as this image that we glorify. Our bodies are supposed to be different, but sometimes we're not taught that. And that to me is a generational curse. So my mom did not have great body image for herself. Therefore, I did not develop great body image for myself. And I passed it down to even my children, even my boys, my eldest son mainly, and my daughter, because that was something that when I was having kids, I did not feel positive in my body image. And in a sense, kind of gave them unhealthy eating habits within themselves. And a lot of people just say, oh, that's just learned behaviors. But when it's suppressed behavior, when we don't talk about it outwardly, that is a generational curse. And some of these I can talk about because I have been given permission, and my kids speak about it on their social media platforms. But some that they haven't spoken up about or haven't been put out there publicly, I will not talk about because it is their story. But when it comes to generational curses, a lot of people learned, my generation, my mom's generation, even sort of my kids, 30, their generation too, are starting to open up and talk about it. First thing I'm going to talk about when it comes to generational curses is molesting. And of course, this could end up being one of those emotional conversations for me to be on here, but it's because it's close to me. It's something that we're dealing with still, but it's out there. It's in the open. We can you'll see the smile because it's out. We're dealing with it. We're breaking it. So there's two stories to molesting with me. I was told that my father molested me. I was, brainwashed to think my father molested me. On the other hand, I was molested. I will not speak about who did that, but I was. But what do you think I did? I suppressed it. Because why? We don't talk about that. I don't want the shame on me. I don't want the guilt on me. As a parent, if your child is coming to you telling you any type of stories, this should not be a subject where you are saying, I don't want the shame and guilt on me. Because now what have you done? You've implanted in your child's brain to be shameful and guilty. So that too is a generational curse where we are teaching our children the shame and guilt behind something that they did not ask for. So generational curses is molesting. So, of course, being told my father did something that I now have gone back. It was never my father, somebody else. Yes. Proven. Yes. Gone back. Now have the visions. But I didn't really start thinking about it until I was in my 40s, well, in my 30s, when I had the conversation with my dad to tell him that I know that that did not happen. I don't believe it happened. My dad died shortly after. But having that conversation brought it up. But unfortunately, the damage was already kind of done for my child. So that's one generation because I'd suppressed it and it came out. And my son, I'm not going to name my children's names on this show. It's for them. They're going to come on here one time and we'll have a conversation around it. I'm willing to have that conversation with my children on the air because we've had these conversations. But my son came out, he had an addiction, and he had been molested by my mother. So suppressed, now it's out. Now we're talking about it. It's out, it's open. Hopefully this is well, I'm not going to say hopefully, we're choosing to break this generational curse and it's going to be broken. My children do not have children. Well, that is another conversation all in of itself, but it's being broken because we're talking about it. We're not bringing more kids in here so that we can continue to suppress this. It's out there, open. Again, another generational curse was and I've already talked about this on my show, so this is not anything that's going to blow anybody's mind. I was gang raped. And my daughter was not gang raped, but she was raped. Of course, again, another thing I suppressed within me came out and affected my daughter. Being physically abused, suppressed, came out in my other son. So everything that we sit here and think about, well, you know what? Suppress it. I'll deal with it later. We're suppressing within our bodies. And I'm not saying this can happen to everyone, but I see the change within people I've worked with, people I've been around, people in my friend circle, to now seeing it from my own eyes in my own family and my own family, my own blood, my own children, that all the trauma, and these are, the traumas we think of, because I suppressed them, they've gone through it. But the wonderful thing, not that I wanted any of my kids to go through the trauma I went through, but the good thing, and I hate to say wonderful, but the good thing is that we talk about it. Therapy, everyone's talking about it. We're coming out about it. We're making it known so that what have we done? We're breaking that generational curse. Because if you don't know what a generational curse is, it's something that gets passed down, passed down, passed down. And a lot of people don't realize that all of a sudden they hear, well, my mom was molested by her uncle. I was molested by my whoever. And then all of a sudden you find out about a kid was molested by the neighbor or something. Well, haven't you ever thought maybe there's a string that's connecting it? Maybe there is that string that's connecting it. And how else are we going to break these strings but to talk about it? and get it out in the open. So it's those issues that now you see books all about it. My children and I are looking at writing a book all about the generational curses that we have faced, that we've broken as a family, so that it doesn't keep going on. Yes, some of it will go on a little bit because it was suppressed, but we're breaking it. And there's even more that a lot of people are like, well, we didn't have molesting in my family, or there was nobody raped in my family. So that this whole conversation doesn't relate to me, Sandee. So you know what? I'm going to tune you out. No. There's a lot more to come on my show, but we're going to go on our first break that relate to generational curses, because it's not just about the severe trauma I'm talking about. It's about even bigger topics of our feeling of lack, our feeling of unworthiness, our body image, just all these false beliefs and feelings that we have within ourselves that might not necessarily have come from us, but they've come from the generation before us, from our mothers or from our fathers, because of beliefs that they had. That what have they done? They've either kept talking about it or suppressed it, but a lot of the trauma continues because it's been suppressed within. But I'm going to go into conversations that a lot of us might recognize that created generational curses within us that we keep going on and doing with our kids. So it is time for our first break, and we're going to go on this break. And when we come back, I'm going to continue this conversation. And at one point, something's probably going to be like, you know what, Sandee, you're making a good point. This is what I want to start working on. Well, reach out to me. We can have a connection conversation and talk some tea. But you can reach out to me at sandee@emotionalelevator.com. But like I always say on my show, a rapid response is usually at sandeebyrdcoach@gmail.com, because that is an email that kind of pops up on my phone. So you're joining me tonight on Emotional Elevator. Of course, I am Sandee Byrd, and this is Inspired Choices Network. So we're going to go on our first break. But you want to continue with this conversation, because this conversation can relate to everybody. So thank you for joining me tonight.
Are you living a life of psychological trauma or suffering from an addiction? Are you ready to learn new techniques to elevate your emotions without sustaining or obtaining them from substances that are not good for your mind or body? Then continue to tune into Emotional Elevator with trauma, addiction, life, and spiritual coach, Sandee Byrd, where you will learn techniques to elevate your emotions that don't require a magic pill, food, or impulsive behavior. Listen to Emotional Elevator with Sandee Byrd, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Pacific, on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is Emotional Elevator with Sandee Byrd. To participate in this program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also send an email to sandy@emotionalelevator.com. Now, back to the program.
Well, welcome back. Gosh, my wand almost pulled out my hair. Anyway, tonight I've been talking about generational curses. And let me first tell you, why am I an expert on this? Because This is what I've really been learning about, embracing in my life about generational curses. And so I am a coach. I'm not just a life coach. I am a trauma coach that deals with trauma from anywhere from severe trauma, like the rape, addiction, any trauma is trauma. And like I always talk about on my show, some people say, well, I was never raped. I've never been addicted. We're all addicted to something at some form in our life, whether it's, just addicted to working hard. There's an addiction, making sure I make my bed every day. That technically can be a bad habit that can turn into an addiction. Because if you can't leave the house or you got to come back in because you think you didn't make the bed, that to me is an addiction. But anyway, trauma can also be, like I talk a lot about, is in school. Like if someone laughed at you because of what you were wearing when you dressed yourself. But I'm also a self-development coach. And what a self-development coach is, someone who helps develop who you want to be. I've gone through a lot of development since talking about generational curses, addictions, codependency, cold syndrome mother. So that's what a self-development coach is as well. And when it comes to midlife, I'm a midlife coach because sometimes in midlife we go through so many different changes. We're empty nest. Sometimes we're going through a divorce. Sometimes we're trying to figure out, what do I want to do with the next 50 years of my life? Because at 50, I realize I might be here another 50 and I want to make the most of it because the first 50 years were kind of crappy and I want to make the most of it now. But also in midlife, you don't realize sometimes you've got to care for a loved one and you've got to figure out, can I mentally and physically care for that parent? I had to do it when I was not. I, thank goodness, had already started working on myself enough to know I can literally be there the day my mom passes away and I will be okay with it because I set boundaries with her that I'd never set before. Even in her dying days, I will walk away if you don't honor me and not this. So that's what I am. And I deal with a lot of different parts of life because we go through a lot. So that's who Sandee Byrd is. I am a coach and I don't consider myself a life coach because I dive deep into who you are. I'm a who you are and who do you want to be coach. And yeah, that could be life, but I think it's deeper than that. But tonight's topic is all about generational curses. And the first part of it, I did go in and start talking about severe traumas that we suppress, that we see coming out when we have children. And it doesn't necessarily have to come from us females. It can come from us men, the men too, when they've gone through something like molesting or rape or abuse and they suppress it. Their children too go through it. So, as I've stated, I had suppressed trauma from molesting and rape and falsely accusing my father. To my kids went through that. They did not falsely accuse their father. Of course, my mother falsely accused her father, who she was the one being the molester. But that's here or there. But other things that we don't think of about generational curses. So we've all seen people who don't come from the best backgrounds, or look into the project, how the projects came about. And think about the mentality that some of them are passed down from generation to generation. Oh, well, this family never amounts to anything. And then they continue that cycle. That is a generational curse. Like, I was raised by a single mother who money was not something we talked about. So therefore, when I went out in the real world, I did not know how to handle money. I also had fear of money. I also knew to hold money tight, or money was never coming to me. I have all this anxiety around abundance that was passed down and passed down. And it could have started with my grandparents in the Depression. I don't know, but it was passed down. And money doesn't grow on trees. Did anyone ever hear that in their life? Because I think if anyone's listened to that and did not hear that once in their life, I want to hear from you. I'll give you $100 because you never heard that. Because I'm telling you, I think at one point, all of us in our life, and I know I said it. What do you think? Money grows on trees? Well, money's made out of trees, right? Because trees are made out of paper. I do remember questioning that part. And I think my own daughter said the same thing to me, which is kind of funny because there's generational passed down right there. But that's what I'm saying. Things like that. Money doesn't grow on trees. That's a generational curse that we've been passing down and passing down and passing down and passing down. Maybe some families didn't say it, but I know mine did. And I know my grandparents said it, my mother said it, and I know I've said it. I never want to hear my kids say it because, in a sense, we're putting fear of money. We are instilling fear around money by saying that. And that is a generational curse because if nobody said it, if me as a parent didn't say it, my kids would never probably say it. So think about that. That is a generational curse. So let's think about love. No one's going to love you. No one loved me, so why would they love you? Some of us heard that too. So now that's another curse that was put on us to think nobody's going to love us. So see how I'm flowing with this? Because everyone's like, ooh, generational curses, that's taboo, or that's this, or that's that. No, it's not. And there's other generational curses behind religion, behind your background, your status. Well, we're not going to be anything but of the middle class. That's putting a limitation. And that's what we do sometimes, and we don't realize we're doing it. And that's sometimes what our parents have done to us, is put that limitation on us. Do we want to keep doing that? Do we want to keep instilling these false fears, these false beliefs into our own generations and generations to come? Because think about it. If you're listening to me and you're a parent and you ever said to your kids, money doesn't grow on trees, or you're never going to make it as a singer, you've killed their dreams. You've killed their hopes. Unless they are, and I'm going to name somebody on here because I listened to a lot of his inspiration. Steve Harvey in school was laughed at because he had a stutter and everything like that. And I remember him telling the story, and he would go back and buy his teacher a new TV every year. She said, "You're not going to be anything." And he beat the odds because he did not believe what was being told to him. But one of his parents was saying it at home, but the other one wasn't. So that's why that wasn't necessarily a generational curse for him, because he was hearing it not from generation. But if he went home all the time and his parents said, "You're not funny. Actually, that's stupid," what would he have believed? Do you think he might be this millionaire and funny and big celebrity that he is? But if he was told that and he didn't believe it, he was already breaking generational curses. Think about how many diseases that we pass down in our families as well, because that's another one that I can talk about big in my family is medical generational curses, and how we buy into these things within ourselves, and how sometimes even mental illnesses we buy into. And that to me is not anything but a generational curse. There's so much in our lives that we can contribute, that we need to break, that we need to break the cycles up, because we are taught things that somebody else believed, and false hopes, false beliefs, false values of a parent or a grandparent or someone that just kept drilling it into us, became a false value for us. I can go on and on. This could be like a 3-hour show for me to continue to unravel some of the generational curses that I've unraveled. But to you, it's probably ringing a bell and going, oh my gosh, it is time for us to go on our second break so that we can continue on this conversation about generational curses, because this is a big topic. Not only is it trauma, not only is it false beliefs we have about ourselves, like body image, abundance, if we're going to make it in the world, but it can also be about medical. I was thinking physical, medical generational curses that is put on us. So let's go to the second break. And when we come back, I will continue to talk about this. And like I said, if any of this rings a bell, please, 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 let's get on a connection call. Let's start working together to break your generational curses. Because you know what? I think that's going to be another one of my big things, is I'm going to be a generational curse slayer, because I know what generational curses my family's breaking, and I want your family to break them too. So reach out to me at sandeebyrdcoach@gmail.com for a rapid response, or sandy@emotionalelevator.com. But we are going to go on this second break.
Are you living a life of psychological trauma or suffering from an addiction? Are you ready to learn new techniques to elevate your emotions without sustaining or obtaining them from substances that are not good for your mind or body? Then continue to tune into Emotional Elevator with trauma, addiction, life, and spiritual coach, Sandee Byrd, where you will learn techniques to elevate your emotions that don't require a magic pill, food, or impulsive behavior. Listen to Emotional Elevator with Sandee Byrd, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Pacific, on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is Emotional Elevator with Sandee Byrd. To participate in this program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also send an email to sandy@emotionalelevator.com. Now, back to the program.
Well, welcome back. Tonight's show is all about generational curses, and I think that is a new coaching for me. Generational curse slayer. And that's probably part of self-development and midlife. But think about that. All the things that we are bogged down, those false beliefs and hopes throughout our life. And to see all the generational curses that we continue to pass down, how rewarding would it be for you, as even if you haven't had children yet and you're listening to me and you're in your 30s or 20s and you want to break those cycles, hey, let's get on a conversation. Let's have a conversation call. So definitely reach out to me, because when it comes to generational curses, I am an expert on it, because every year, every month, every moment, there's some things I hear and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to believe that anymore, because that's something that was passed down to me that I'm no longer going to buy into, because that's what we do. When it's generational curses, we buy into that false BS that we've been fed all of our life. And I'm going to probably go into maybe a little bit of a taboo topic, and it's probably two topics that I feel strongly about, and that is political beliefs and religious beliefs in families. We are conditioned to believe what our parents or our family, or, well, you have to be a Republican, a Democrat, or independent because your grandfather and your grandma and your mom, and why would you believe this and why wouldn't you believe that, and blah, 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 blah. And then we buy into these without even believing what we really want to believe in. Same thing with church. I'm not going to say it, raised in the church. Well, I am going to say it. And being told that, oh my gosh, we don't want to talk about that because we don't want God to hear that I was raped, because I'm going to be blamed and I'm going to go to hell. Please, please. If he didn't see it happening or didn't know it happens, then who really is this God? So that was false too for me. Like, to really sit here and think the only way I can get to heaven is through Jesus Christ, and how am I going to meet Jesus Christ? And that was a belief of mine that I kind of questioned. Yes, I am a Christian. Yes, I believe Jesus was Jesus. And yes, I believe, but I believe now in my life, I'm living in hell, or I've gone through hell. And it's only going to be heaven after that. But that's my belief. And as I was very fortunate to break that within my kids, where I didn't force them to believe anything they didn't want to believe when it came to church or state. Just didn't. A lot of my kids believe differently about politics. A lot of my kids. Well, yeah, because my husband's kids and my kids, 6 kids. You can believe whatever you want politically, where I'm going to believe whatever I want. Same thing when it comes to church. I'm not going to push beliefs that I don't believe anymore on you either. But when it comes down to these generational curses, it's the same thing with medical. And I'm going to say it. My kids and I spent years going to the doctor every year to get our blood tested, because I'm the daughter of a father that was a insulin-dependent diabetic. My kids were the children of a father that was insulin dependent, and my daughter and I were falsely believed that we would be diabetics, because the fathers usually pass it on to the daughter. So you want to make sure you check your blood sugar and do all these things and everything like that. And at one point, guess what? I was pre-diabetic because I bought into it, because I was cursed with it. Then both my parents died of cancer, which I believe differently in all why our bodies do what they do. But every time I get something, and usually when it comes to my skin, it's a little different. They check it. Oh no, it's just, one of those wisdom. I'm full of so much wisdom on my body. Let me just tell you, my body is full of wisdom. But anyway, every time I get a spot, if I go and say, oh, my chest has been hurting, and they take an x-ray and there's, a little spot on my lung or something. Oh, we got to get her in. We got to get her tested. We got to get blood work done. They're already preaching that I've got cancer, when I don't. It's just maybe because I've been coughing for a month and I feel like I've got maybe some fluid in my lungs. But now they rush me in because both my parents and my grandma and a lot of my family has had cancer. And now I won't even go to the doctor anymore. I do go to one of my doctors because I do have some illnesses that I've been able to cure within myself. I have been able to cure within myself because I don't believe that they exist, because it's something that was passed down for me to believe from a parent, or from, these are illnesses that have been running in our family for years and generations, so you've got it. And I falsely was believing that. And we do that medically. We do that medically a lot from our family. And that, again, I think is a big generational curse, that we put so much emphasis on our children, our families, when we do that. Because I do know, as a child, one point I was heavy, I was thin, I was heavy, I was thin. Don't eat that because you're going to get fat. Well, I got fat, but I was also developing into who I was. And that was a generational curse. That was body image shaming that my mom already suffered from, and I suffered from. And I started doing the same thing to my daughter. Be careful what you're eating. Watch what you're eating, because you don't want to be like I was, or your Nana was. That right there is passing on a curse from generation to generation, because we're putting these beliefs into our children that we also believe. And that is a generational curse. So there's so much of this. I could continue to talk about this for hours, about these systems we had in place when we were children, when I was a children, and then when my children were born, that I realized. I remember hearing my mom say it, and even sometimes my grandparents say it to me. And what did I do? Instead of stop saying it, I said it to them. Don't. Okay, here's another one. And I worked with a client on this saying, and if she's listening, still love you. Will always love you. But one of the hardest things for her as a client was, don't say anything unless you have anything nice to say. She realized that she held on to that, and she never spoke up for someone who ended up killing themselves. And the reason is because when they were being bullied, don't say anything unless you have anything nice to say. And when she tried to bring up, I don't like that this person is saying these nasty things about this person. No, no, no. We don't do that. You're criticizing somebody. Only speak if you have something nice to say. And she carries a lot of guilt in herself because this person was bullied and they took their life. And because she was told never to say anything unless you have something nice to say, she carries that guilt because she never spoke up. And so now we work together a lot about breaking the people-pleasing phase, because she always felt she needed to please everybody else. And people literally could walk all over her. Like, she'd be laying down, she'd be that person people are trampling on. Get back up, do it again. Because she had been conditioned, generationally cursed, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. So she never could speak up when there was bullying that happened in front of her, where someone ended up killing themselves over. When she too went through some trauma in her life, she couldn't say anything. Well, we don't want to talk about that because that's not nice. I was sexually abused, and we don't want to talk about that because that's not nice. Think about that. If you're a parent, or if you're going to be a parent, or if you went through anything in your life and that's what you were told, stop carrying that guilt. Stop carrying that shame. because no one should have ever told you that. Because that's usually something that they were told too. So sometimes in life, the victim becomes the predator because they don't know any better, because they are still following the lines of those false beliefs or those false thoughts. And they just trickle it off their tongue. Because right now, I truly, truly believe that when things happened to my mom and she spoke up, it was, no, 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 no. We're not going to talk about it. We're not going to do anything about it. And that's why it continued in my family until now. It's being broken because it's being spoken about. And we're getting the help as a family that I should have got. But I was still part of that. No, 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 no. We don't talk about that. But there's so much more complexity to that. Like I've talked about already, the money, the body image, the shame, guilt, the everything that you think about that's passed down from generation to generation. Those little key phrases that we say to our children that our parents said to us, that their parents said to them. We are continuing to curse our children with that. And I'm not saying all of it is a curse, but when it comes to the negative connotation behind it, it is a curse. Because think about what a curse is. And when you say generational, it's because it's been happening for year after year after year. Well, generation after generation after generation. No one is stopping the cycle. And I'm so glad that people say, like, some of the generations now are woke. Don't like that word, but woke is because they're speaking about it, because they don't want it to continue. They want the traumas to stop. They want the abuse to stop. They want the negative body image to stop. They want the religious mumbo jumbo that they were taught to stop. The political badgering to stop. The everything that they have been piled on that already they're coming into this world with, but now we've piled it on from generation to generation. Well, anyway, it is time for our last break. And like I've said, if any of this rings a bell to you, or all of this rings a bell to you, or part of this rings a bell to you, let's get on a conversation, a connection conversation. Because there's nothing better. And as I start writing a book, for me to get even other people's thoughts on it about generational curses. And, to know that you're not alone, that there's somebody willing to walk the line with you to start breaking your generational curses. Get in touch with me, Sandee Byrd Coach at gmail.com or Sandee at emotionalelevator.com. I am here for you. And I would love to work with people who can sit here and say, you know what, I'm tired of all the stuff that's been laid on me that I'm done with. It doesn't serve who I am. It's not who I want to be. And I don't want my kids or my future kids, or I want to be able to have these conversations with my kids to know what do we need to break within ourselves and our family. But let's go on this last break because I only got a couple of minutes or a few minutes left. A couple is two, a few is more. So we're going to go on this break. And thank you for joining me tonight on Inspired Choices Network.
Are you living a life of psychological trauma or suffering from an addiction? Are you ready to learn new techniques to elevate your emotions without sustaining or obtaining them from substances that are not good for your mind or body? Then continue to tune into Emotional Elevator with trauma, addiction, life, and spiritual coach, Sandee Byrd, where you will learn techniques to elevate your emotions that don't require a magic pill, food, or impulsive behavior. Listen to Emotional Elevator with Sandee Byrd, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is Emotional Elevator with Sandee Byrd. To participate in this program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also send an email to Sandee@emotionalelevator.com. Now, back to the program.
You've been watching me, or you are watching me on the break. Yes, I bit the inside of my lip or my gum right there. That is a habit that I have been told sometimes when I get nervous, I do. I chew. And that was a habit of my dad's, but it's a habit. And it could be a generational curse, but it's okay. But a generational curse that I decided to break was me speaking up about these things. Because I do know, and a lot of it came from my own mom, and her generational curse is people aren't going to listen to you. She used to tell me that. People aren't going to care what you have to say, and they do. And what I'm talking about is valuable, and it is important. And talking about generational curses is what's going to help us to continue to break the cycles within families, within society, within the world. Because sometimes prejudice is a generational curse, because it's a learned belief that we might not believe in. So as you've listened to this, or as you've watched the show, please think about that, because generational curses are a big part of who we think we are, that we might not be. And that's why this show for me is very important. This is why I want to bring my children on here, so we can dive into this as a family, so you can see how to have that conversation with you and your children. But you've got to be open and ready to hear what has been passed down, from body image to medically, to shame over money and abundance, to shame and guilt for, even having children out of wedlock. That was a generational curse that got passed down to me. And you know what? I'm okay. My kids are okay from that. That is not a curse that we even care if it happened again. But at this point, I'm not even sure if my kids are going to have kids, because they want a break. And I'm so thankful I don't have grandkids right now, but I do have a grandchild. But that's another story. I want them to break all these generational curses, so when we end up having the next generation come up, they're good. There's going to be some things passed down, but I want them to be positive, to think for yourself, to love yourself, to care for yourself, speak up for yourself. Whether anything happens or not, we are going to be here to support you, not to shame you, not to guilt you, not to shut you up. Because that's what generational curses are all about, are those things where we shamed our children, or were shamed on us. Money don't grow on trees. Money can't buy happiness. All of those, even though sometimes money can't buy happiness, but all of those are generational curses. If you are stagnant in your life with your low class, middle class, upper class, and then you lose it all, that's a generational curse. So thank you for listening to me tonight, all on generational curses. I am Sandee Byrd. Please reach out to me at sandeebirdcoach@gmail.com. Let's have a connection conversation. You can also email me at Sandee@emotionalelevator.com. But I'm an expert on all the topics I talk about, because I have evolved around all these topics. And thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Emotional Elevator Show. Sandee returns Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. Until then, start elevating your emotions and stop riding the emotional elevator that is stopping you from living the life you deserve.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Emotional Elevator Show. Sandee returns Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. Until then, start elevating your emotions and stop riding the emotional elevator that is stopping you from living the life you deserve.